Have you ever felt sudden anger towards someone you barely know? Or said something to someone you love that they didn't deserve? And then told yourself, that's not who I am. But was it really not you? According to Jung, it was. And it's the part of you that you know the least. He calls it the shadow. And today I'm going to show you this. The more you deny it, the stronger it gets. When you were a child, you were taught certain things. Anger is bad. Wanting too much is selfish. Crying is weakness. Don't take up too much space. So you buried those feelings. You had to. Because you wanted to be loved, you wanted to be accepted. Your family, your teachers, society, they all taught you which parts of yourself were acceptable. You hid the rest. Jung calls these the shadow. Everything you suppressed, rejected, and told yourself wasn't part of who you are. Jung described it as the thing a person has no wish to be. Not a monster. Not evil. Just the sum of every quality you decided wasn't safe to show. But here's what Jung says. Burying something is not the same as destroying it. Those feelings don't disappear. They just become invisible, and they grow in the dark. Jung wrote, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The more you run from it, the bigger it gets. And here's the part most people miss. The shadow doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It waits. It waits for the moment your defenses are down, and then it moves. The shadow shows up in two ways, and you've probably experienced both of them today. The first is in other people. Think about it. What kind of person bothers you the most? People who are too confident? People who set boundaries? People who love being the center of attention? Jung calls this projection. When you see something in others that you've buried in yourself, it triggers a reaction you can't quite explain. If you suppressed your confidence, confident people will irritate you. If you suppressed your anger, angry people will set you off. If you suppressed your ambition, you'll label ambitious people as selfish. What you hate in others is often what you refuse to see in yourself. Here's a simple example. A person who believes that being assertive means being rude, they buried their ability to speak up for themselves. And so, when they meet someone who sets clear boundaries, something inside them feels resentment. Not because that person did anything wrong, but because that person is living what they couldn't allow themselves to be. The second way the shadow appears is in your unguarded moments. When you're exhausted, under extreme stress, or after a few drinks, you suddenly become someone else. That's your shadow speaking. Jung explained it this way. The shadow takes over most when the ego is weak. When your defenses are down, everything you've suppressed rises to the surface. You might suddenly say something cruel in the middle of a friendly conversation. You might feel an inexplicable mood descend on you out of nowhere. You might act in ways that later make you ask, where did that come from? And afterward, you ask yourself, was that really me? The answer is yes, but only one part of you. The part that never got to speak. The most destructive place the shadow shows up is in relationships. Why do you keep attracting the same type of people? Why do you keep having the same arguments? Why do you hurt the people you love the most? Because the shadow projects onto relationships. What bothers you most about your partner is most likely what you've suppressed most in yourself. Let's say you were taught as a child that needing people is weakness, so you buried that need. You learned to appear strong, but that need didn't disappear. It just moved into the shadow. And now, when your partner expresses even the smallest need, you feel a disproportionate anger rise inside you. You think, why are they so needy? But you're actually angry at your own need. This is what Jung means by projection. We don't see people as they are. We see them through the lens of everything we've refused to accept in ourselves. And this is why so many relationships fail without either person understanding why. It's not incompatibility. It's two people's shadows colliding, and neither one recognizing it. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. It's not fate, it's the shadow. There's something else worth understanding." Jung believed that many people never truly become themselves, not because they lack intelligence or ability, but because they spend their entire lives running from their shadow. He called this individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole, of bringing the conscious and unconscious into balance. And he was clear, you cannot individuate without confronting your shadow. Most people, he said, are too afraid to look. It's easier to project, to blame, to label others as the problem. But every time you project your shadow onto someone else, you lose a piece of yourself. Because the shadow doesn't only contain your darkness, it contains everything you buried, including the good. Marie-Louise von France, one of Jung's closest collaborators, wrote, "The shadow is not necessarily always an opponent. He is exactly like any human being with whom one has to get along. Sometimes by giving in, sometimes by resisting, sometimes by giving love. Think about what you buried alongside your anger, your passion, your fire. Think about what you buried alongside your neediness, your capacity for deep connection, your vulnerability. Think about what you buried alongside your pride, your ambition, your belief that you deserve more. The shadow holds all of it." So what do? Jung's answer is simple but difficult. Face your shadow. He calls this shadow work, and he described it as the psychological equivalent of the labors of Hercules. Painful, lengthy, but necessary. It begins with honesty. The next time something triggers you, stop. Ask yourself, why is this affecting me so deeply? The answer is usually in the shadow. Watch your emotional reactions. The places where you overreact, where your response is bigger than the situation deserves. Those are the entry points. Be radically honest in your interactions with others. When you feel resentment, ask yourself what it's really about, and pay attention to your dreams. Jung believed the shadow often appears in dreams as a figure of the same sex, a dark version of yourself, a stranger who unsettles you, a critic who won't leave you alone. You're not saying I am an angry person. You're saying there is suppressed anger inside me, and I want to understand where it comes from. The difference is significant. The first one defines you. The second one sets you free. Because shadow work isn't about becoming darker. It's about becoming more complete. Jung also reminds us, the shadow isn't only darkness. Inside it are strengths you buried too. The ability to set boundaries that you suppressed. The creativity you suppressed. The confidence you suppressed. Shadow work means reclaiming those strengths. Jung put it this way, there is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. Stop striving for perfection. Start striving for wholeness. Here's what it comes down to. Your shadow formed to protect you. When you were small and the world felt unsafe, you learned which parts of yourself were acceptable. You built a version of yourself that could survive, but you're not small anymore. And the parts you buried back then, they're still waiting. Not to destroy you, to complete you. Jung wrote that confronting the shadow is frightening, but he also wrote that finding the truth, even the dark truth, brings relief. Because the energy you've spent your whole life keeping that door closed. Imagine what you could do if you stopped. I'll leave you with one question. What is it that bothers you most in other people? Your answer might be the door to your shadow. In the next video, we'll talk about the persona, the mask you wear to hide your shadow, and how that mask is slowly pulling you away from who you really are. Write in the comments. Where do you notice your shadow the most? In relationships, at work, or when you're alone? Feel seen? You're already one of us. Subscribe? Think too much? You're home.